Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we are jumping into another one of these big pastry imperial stouts from Wolf's Ridge Brewing Company. This is their Todd's Cupcakes line, all of which are a different kind of pastry in beer form. Today's is called Peanut Butter Pastry Stout, aptly named. Clocks in at 12.2% ABV, and this one's been brewed with Vietnamese cinnamon, single origin Ghana cacao, and peanuts. Wolf's Ridge Brewing Company is based in Columbus, Ohio. So we've had quite a bunch of imperial stouts from Wolf's Ridge Brewing Company as of late, and it's a new brewer that I've only just in the last few months seen pop up in Tavour. So the first batch that we got was all of those kind of dire wolf, different flavored imperial stouts. Now we're on the pastry side with this Todd's Cupcakes kind of version. And I've got 3 or 4 of these as well, different flavors. This one sounds awesome to me. In terms of label art, it's just like the last one we reviewed. It's got this kind of topographical map looking thing on there. This one obviously kind of peanut butter colored to get you in the mood. Not much else to talk about there. So we're gonna get this cracked gently and poured, gently, right into the old stout glass here. So, all right, this one is dark. It doesn't look particularly thick pouring out, but it's a nice dark color. So we're gonna be a bit aggressive going down the middle, give that a chance to form a head. All right, gonna let that settle a bit. So visually, yeah, pitch black as expected. In terms of carbonation, I know the camera is not picking it up at all, but there is a lot of super tiny, fine, tight effervescence clinging to the side of the glass. Obviously, it's pitch black, so I can't see what's happening in the middle, but it did form quite a nice, thick, creamy head here. No problem at all. Yeah, that would be worthy of coming off of a tap. It poured so beautifully and thickly. Looks wonderful. So let's get right up over this for a sniff. Wow, yeah. So the cinnamon and the peanuts really jump out at you. You can really smell the roasty malt bill. There's nothing I'm getting on the nose at all that's really saying, oh, that's the cacao. It's just not going to pop out as an aromatic. I'm sure it'll be present in the flavor profile, but the cinnamon and the peanuts and the roasty edge of that malt bill really are quite readily apparent. Smells really, really nice, exactly as you would expect. So one thing of note, they do not mention on here any lactose addition. That would be very typical for a pastry stout, though I don't see any lactose intolerance warning on here at all, and they don't mention anything about it. So we'll just jump in and see if we think that they have any lactose addition by taste. So it has settled down, still got a really nice thick creamy head. I mean, that has settled down a little bit from where I started, but that'll just give us a good opportunity here to top this off just a tick to where it starts the curve of the tulip. And I'm always getting little dribbles off the side of the can all over my hands. That's fine. That's what soap and water is for. So without further ado, let's jump right in. It's probably gonna make a mess of my beard, but I wanna see what this is about. Ooh, big beer. Yeah, no lactose, no sweetness at all. So they're going pastry by, pastry inspired kind of additive ingredients, but they're not throwing in lactose to make it sweet like many, dare I say most, pastry stouts. This is big. This is bold. This is roasty. So, peanut butter pastry stout, yeah, I'd agree with that. The peanuts in this really are quite prominent, and it's roasted peanut, that's clear, which is going to add, aside from very obvious peanut flavor, it's going to add a lot of underlying earthiness and bitterness, and that is pairing with this big malt bill. Now, the malt bills that I've had from Wolf's Ridge to date in their imperial stouts are very big, and they are very bold and roasty. Very flavor forward. There's a lot of earthiness to it, elements of char, tons of bitters that pop out of these beers. This is no exception. You don't often get a lot of bitters in a pastry stout, but it's absolutely here. There's no lactose, so really the malt bill and the additives are having a lot to say. The cinnamon is quite prevalent as well. It's not dominant like the peanuts are, but it pops out very, very clearly right up on the front as you're getting this big, bold, roasty, earthy malt bill in tandem with those roasty, bordering on bitter kind of peanut vibes. The cinnamon pops right out at you. So the single origin Ghana cacao, that to me is really coming through very clearly on the back end. And it's when kind of the intensity of the bitters start to settle down a little bit and you're left over this residual peanut. And it almost puts me in mind of like a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup kind of vibe, but in beer form. And that's when you can really taste the chocolate. So the peanut's really coming through and this chocolate is popping straight out as an additive. It's really when the bitters start to dial down a bit. There's a lot that's happening in this beer and I really, really like it. I love a good peanut butter stout. And cinnamon is one of my favorite ingredients pretty much in anything, period. I absolutely love cinnamon. And in a big stout like this, especially paired with peanuts, I never would have thought to add cinnamon with something with peanuts in it like this. But it absolutely works. It absolutely works. So the cinnamon kind of comes in on a different phase than the cacao does. The peanuts are kind of the anchor as well as the malt bill that are consistent and ever present in this beer. The cinnamon comes on the front side where you get this roasty kind of edge to the malt bill and this big earthy bite. And then of course the peanuts are there as well. But then the cacao comes in on the back end when the bitterness dials down. And then you really get this punch of cacao with the peanut that kind of puts me in this peanut butter cup vibe. It's almost got this kind of two personalities take to the beer, but it's absolutely delicious and it's very big, very bold, very much in your face and flavor forward. So I'm going to jump back in for a second sip, let everything re-intensify. We're going to pick apart, see if I missed anything. Then we're going to talk about this finish, but yet another great beer, another great stout by Wolf's Ridge Brewing. Take two. Body on this one to me feels medium. 12.2%, you'd expect it to be really weighty. It's not super heavy. It's not as heavy as you would expect for a 12.2% Imperial Stout. The mouthfeel's got a decent bit of resistance, but again, it's not quite as thick and viscous as you would expect in this ABV range. But the body and the mouthfeel do go quite well in tandem. That being said, not as high as I expected, but they feel nice. Again, up front, you get this big pop of earthiness, of char, of bitters, and this is all driving straight out of the malt bill. And the cinnamon pops right alongside it as well as does the peanut. So like immediately up front, you get all three of those things. And it kind of crescendos, and then it holds for a little bit, and then it starts its descent. And it is when the bitters start to dial back that cacao really comes to its own. I don't really get anything that tastes chocolatey cacao-like at all until about the 15 to 20 second mark when the bitter intensity and that roast edge starts to dial back just a little bit. Then you're left with a more pure peanut flavor, less bitter intensity, less earthy intensity. Same thing from the malt bill, that dials back. That cacao starts to open up. The cinnamon, there's still a little residual there, but it tapers off ever more as that cacao starts to kind of rise up in its presence and bind with the peanut, and that's where that peanut butter cup vibe comes from. It's a really, really nice beer. Now, despite the fact that there's this dial back of bitters to kind of let the cacao open up and bind with that peanut, the finish on this is actually quite long. Way longer than your average pastry stout. And on this one, the driving factor is indeed still this underlying sense of bitters. And it's coming from a combination of the malt bill itself, which is really driving this earthy edge to it, this roasty edge that's coming from the peanuts, and I would even say a little bit of the cacao, because without a sweetener, it does have a naturally kind of bitter side. If you've ever eaten any like baker's cocoa powder that's not mixed with any just pure cacao powder, it's bitter, just like baker's chocolate. It's bitter, it's pure cacao. It's not mixed with sugar. And yeah, so there's this earthy sense, and it does drive out way longer than you would get on your average pastry Imperial Stout. Really Imperial otherwise, but way longer than a standard Imperial Stout, and I love it for that. And it's really still got this lingering peanut and this lingering chocolate vibe on the back. Cinnamon disappears really once we hit about the 30-45 second mark, but the finish, quite long, impressively long. Overall, I really like this beer. The balance on it is really great too. There's different elements that pop in at different points in time, but it just makes the beer that much more interesting to drink and to dissect. I absolutely love it. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, come up my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Wolf's Ridge Brewing Company's Todd's Cupcakes. This specific one was called Peanut Butter Pastry Stout, an Imperial Pastry Stout, clocking in at 12.2% ABV. This one was brewed with Vietnamese cinnamon, single origin Ghana, cacao, and also peanuts. Wolf's Ridge is based in Columbus, Ohio. So this is the second one of the Todd's Cupcakes Imperial Pastry Stouts from Wolf's Ridge, and this one was just awesome. It sounded great to me, and indeed I was not disappointed. This came pretty close to getting top marks in all categories. There were just two areas where it did not get a perfect 10 out of 10. The first of those was in the body. This really to me was just high end of average. 12.2% ABV, that's not low by any stretch. And this was really only in the medium kind of territory. I mean, maybe you could argue it was on the higher end of medium, possibly on the extreme low end of medium heavy, but it certainly wasn't as robust and didn't have the weight behind it that you would expect in this ABV range. So the body does get a 6 out of 10. The second category was the mouthfeel. The mouthfeel, just like the body, it just didn't have the resistance and the thickness that you would expect of a pastry stout over 12% ABV. Yet again, this was really just high end of average, and the mouthfeel also gets a 6 out of 10. But it did get a perfect 10 out of 10 in all 8 remaining categories. That's aroma, taste, finish, head and retention, appearance, balance, feeling in the intangible, and example of style. So that does bring the total score on Wolf's Ridge Brewing Todd's Cupcakes Peanut Butter Pastry Stout to a 92 out of 100. This was just awesome. It's been a real treat getting to jump in to these big Imperial Stouts from Wolf's Ridge Brewing that have been popping up in Tavour the last couple of months. I have had quite a lot of their beers now in kind of various directions that they've gone with them, and I'm really liking what they're about. Very nice combinations of additives that kind of take on this same base beer style and you just tweak it. So you've got these different kind of classifications of basically the same beer. Just how can we make this different? Which is always cool because it shows you just how big of a deal having a good solid foundational base beer is, and also how big of a drastic change just tweaking some additives can make to the final product. But this one, I absolutely loved. I think this is right up the alley for anybody that loves big, bold Imperial Stouts. I also really appreciated that this was a big, deep, rich, roasty beer. It wasn't sweet. It let the malt bill speak, and frankly, the additives they chose worked very well in that fact, but I absolutely loved it. This is one I would recommend to anybody. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.